Committee members, I will call the meeting to order and welcome to meeting number 14 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting again is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November the 25th. Members may attend in Zoom or in person. If you are attending by Zoom, use the Zoom application and the icons available and choose the language of your choice. Given the ongoing pandemic situation and in light of the recommendation from health authorities, I would anticipate each of the members would follow proper health protocols. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for the cooperation. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. If the interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raised hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for mask use and health protocols. While I'm referencing the interpretation services, I would just want to remind at a liaison committee meeting yesterday, we had a meeting from translation services, and we could not conduct these meetings without the interpreters who translate for us. So for those appearing virtually, it's very important you have the proper headset so that the issue becomes not hearing you, it's the background noise that makes it difficult for the interpreters to do their job, as well as if we could speak slowly and loudly, because again, I want to thank the translators for the valuable role they play. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our best to maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Today, the minister will be appearing, and pursuant to Standing Order 102, the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, January 31st, 2021, the committee will proceed to a briefing on the ministerial mandate letters and pursuant to Standing Order 81-4 and the motion adopted on Thursday, March the 3rd, the committee will commence consideration of the main estimates of for 2022-2023. The first round, as you're aware, was noticed the minister will be appearing in the first hour. Department officials will be appearing. They are Laurie McDonald, Senior Associate Deputy Minister Employment and Social Development and Chief Operating Officer for Service Canada, Karen Robertson, Chief Financial Officer and Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Cliff Groen, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Benefits and Integrated Services Branch, Service Canada, Mary Crescenzi, Assistant Deputy Minister, Integrity Services Branch, Catherine Demare, Associate Deputy Minister, Skills and Employment, Andrew Brown, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Skills and Employment Branch, Ati Rahman, Assistant Deputy Minister, Nissa Tuman, Assistant Deputy Minister, and Krista Wilcox, Director General Officer for Disability Issues. I will ask one of the department officials to make an opening. No? Okay, it's my understanding that we will go directly to a questioning round. Got a thumbs up from Ms. McDonald. None will be making a statement, which is good because the members like to maximize the time they have for questioning. So with that, thank you, witnesses, for appearing. We will begin with the first 6-minute round, beginning with Madame Kuzi for the opposition. Madame Kuzi, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Thank you very much to the witnesses who are here today from the department. In the minister's absence, it's very good for you to be here. I'm sure she's very busy as the new NDP Liberal coalition will have a significant effect on her department and on the administration of her department. So I'm going to level with you. The questions I'm going to ask you today aren't going to be easy. So I'm very sorry you were left in this position, but Canadians need these important answers from this new NDP Liberal government, and we are relying on you to provide them for us today. So my first one is, Mr. Chair, and I will direct it please to Ms. MacDonald. How much, Ms. MacDonald, will the new dental care program cost?
Chair,
we've heard a lot about it in the media. I know that Canadians certainly are very excited about the prospect, but this is complex and with a very high price tag. We need to know, Ms. MacDonald, how much will this new dental care program cost, please?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make 2 points. The first is I do understand that Minister Quiltrow will be joining us for the second hour. Secondly, I don't have that information here today. Obviously, this is not something that falls under our department, but I'm sure that through future appearances or through a tabling of information, we could provide that at a later date.
Completely understandable, Ms. MacDonald. The accord is only 3 days old, and you will certainly need some time to prepare. Then, Ms. MacDonald, would you happen to know how much, let's say, the first phase is? The 12-year-olds that will be insured up to 2022. Do you have an estimate for that portion of the dental care? We are already 3 months into 2022, so I'm certain you must have been provided with some information before these two parties entered into this agreement. How much will that first phase cost, please?
As I indicated previously, this is not an initiative that falls under the Department of ESDC, and given that is a recent announcement, that information is not available to us. However, I believe at a future appearance or through tabling of information at the committee, when that is available, they would be happy to provide it to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. MacDonald, for that information. My next question on another initiative of the NDP Liberal Coalition
Point of order, Chair.
is very similar.
Point of order.
A point of order.
I've stopped my time at 2:49, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. Thank you.
Just catch that.
Chair.
Your point of order, clearly stated,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, Chair, the member knows full well that this isn't an NDP Liberal government. An agreement that was reached has nothing to do with a coalition government or an NDP Liberal government that the member asserts and that we've heard continually now over the last couple of days.
Point of order,
that
Mr. Chair. This is not a point of order, Mr. Chair.
That is factually incorrect. That is factually incorrect, and the member knows that. So, Chair,
this is not a point of order, Chair.
I would ask that not continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Leipert, I do agree. That is debate. Continue, Madame Kusi.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I'll continue then to my next important question for Canadians to Ms. MacDonald, and that is another initiative we saw in this NDP Liberal Coalition agreement, and that is the implementation of pharmacare by the end of 2023. Now, the PBO did price this out previously at $87 billion. Ms. MacDonald, would you say that this number is still accurate, or should we be considering another number? And should the budget be considering another number given this most recent development?
As I indicated previously, Mr. Chair, these issues don't fall under the mandate of ESDC. Those questions would have to be put forward to the Department of Health or other departments.
J'ai un point d'ordre, Monsieur le Président, aussi.
I've stopped at 3:49, Chair. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'aurais un point d'ordre aussi. Il me semble.
Thank you. I also have a point of order. It seems that my colleagues not being included in what we're doing here today. It's not in a mandate letter of the minister.
If we could probably keep our questions to what's on the table and not what's not on the table today.
Thank you, Madame Ferrata. Madame Kuzi, I would simply ask you to focus your comments on the matter before the committee.
Fair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, this agreement is it's a shock and something new for all of us. I think we're all adjusting here. I would just like to remind the department the end of 2023 is a mere 21 months away. So I would really suggest that they begin their planning for this implementation because there truly is not a lot of time. Another initiative relative to this committee out of the Liberal the NDP Liberal coalition agreement has to do with housing. So I was hoping, Ms. McDonald, ESDC had costed the housing initiatives as outlined in the NDP Liberal coalition agreement.
Thank you for the question. That question may be better presented to infrastructure as our housing CMHC initiatives have been transferred to that department. I don't have that information with me today. I'll just ask my colleague, Karen Robertson, if there's anything that we can add to that.
No, I'm sorry. There's nothing that I can add. It doesn't form part of ESDC's main estimates.
Thank you both for your efforts in attempting to answer that. I've run some numbers based upon Google. There's 235,000 homeless Canadians. The average price of a home is $748,450. That's already an initial investment of $175 billion. What I think we're seeing here, Mr. Chair, is that this NDP Liberal coalition agreement has lots of significant implications, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I'm glad we've shed some light on that today. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Long? Your
Chair,
time is concluded.
Again, the member is stating something that's simply not factually true, that there's a Liberal NDP coalition. The member knows that that's not true. Thank you.
Thank
not
you.
A point of order, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Long. It is a matter of debate, and we are in question. So I
have the agreement.
I will now call on Madame Ferrata for 6 minutes. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ça va me faire plaisir de poser des questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quite pleased to ask a few questions to the department that's here with us today. I'd like to thank them and thank them for all the work that they're doing, particularly in a virtual context. It's quite a bit more difficult. So thank you very much for your attendance today. I'd like to hear some of your perspective on the budget forecast on a few items that are of importance. Modernization of the EI system would be of note. How do you see the next few months developing on this particular portfolio? It seems to be an important priority. Secondly, the financing of community-type organizations and the fund for persons with disabilities. If you could advise us on those three items, please.
Question. I'll ask Catherine Demers if she could please respond to the question with respect to EI modernization.
Oui, bonjour. Ça va me faire plaisir de répondre à la question.
Yes, I'd be pleased to answer the question. So, as for the modernization of the employment insurance system, I hear an echo, but I hope you're hearing me clearly. As for this modernization, which is one of the priorities of government, and a commitment made, clear engagement in the mandate letter of our minister. There have been several developments. We're in full action on the development of this program and to satisfy this engagement. Various phases have already been completed. First, drawing from lessons learned from temporary measures that have been put in place for the EI system to help Canadian workers affected by the pandemic, adding more flexibility and agility to the regime, special measures for the recovery of the economy, which for individuals who couldn't fully use EI benefits. It has met some very important needs of a portion of the population, and we proposed a program of consultation which began last August and is dealing with a number of themes, including access to the employment insurance regime, benefits for parents and families, self-employed and so-called gig workers. And those are some of the issues that were covered in the first phase of consultation, which began last August through roundtables, focus groups, written submissions, and which will continue over the course of the next few months. We've received a lot of support, which is going to help us develop specific proposals, but we have to continue. There's a number of projects in the works currently. We have to ensure that the benefits are adequate, and we are looking at the various financial models that could be used for the program. We're examining how we can best meet self-employed individuals and those who are freelance or casual type workers to satisfy and to meet their requirements. The development is underway. Consultations and engagement meetings will continue over the spring, as was announced at the beginning of the first phase. This will lead us to the development of specific reform measures. One very concrete part of this will be the extension of the benefit period for sickness or illness, medical perhaps, which will go to the end of 2022. Thank you. Okay, can I come back on the second part of my question? Accessibility fund for persons in situation of handicap. Now, we have a number of objectives that have to be met with this program. Could you talk to us about this particular fund and program?
Question. The Enabling Accessibility Fund is a really important program we deliver in the department, and its objective is to promote the accessibility and inclusion of persons with disabilities in our communities and in our workplaces. And Budget 2021 made significant investments into the Enabling Accessibility Fund, $125 million over 2 years. And that funding is going towards a number of important aspects of the program to help us improve accessibility across the country. Specifically, there was $100 million over 2 years that was announced that will help the improvement of the social inclusion of persons with disabilities by supporting a greater number of small projects, which are projects that are under $100,000. Sorry, my dog is making noises behind me. $100,000, and those will go towards not-for-profit organizations, including targeting women's shelters and shelters for victims of violence against women, small municipalities, Indigenous organizations, territorial governments, and businesses of all sizes for our workplace stream. There was also a separate, sorry, I should add that that would help about 900 renovations, retrofits, and accessible technology projects through that investment. There was also, as part of the early learning and childcare funding that was announced, an
Madame
additional
Wilcox, thank you. You may continue with that at a further question, but we're gone over time. Now to Madame Chabot. À vous la parole.
Merci.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I have two questions, basically. One on the reform of the EI program, and the second on the temporary foreign workers program. As for the employment insurance reform, the last government budget announced several hundred millions of dollars for consultations. The problem we had with those is they were not quite as transparent as they might have been. If we try to find on your website the proceedings of those consultations, well, we had a hard look and we had difficulty finding it. We know that you did an online consultation. Could we get a report of those consultations? That's my first question. And by way of transparency, could you provide more clarity as to the various phases, stages, the themes, who was consulted? You're saying that these are ongoing. We know that there were inequity issues or some failures in representation or representativity. The spokespeople, spokespersons of the opposition should, of course, be able to participate in the process of reform. So the question is, can you provide us with clear information as to the content of these consultations, what has occurred, and what is yet to come? Yes, I'd be pleased to answer that question. In the first phase of consultations, as I explained earlier, began last August with the launch of a roundtable with Minister Qualtrough and the two commissioners for the employment insurance coverage. Oh, yes, I'm aware of the stage, but I'd like to know if it's possible, if you can provide some kind of summary reports of what has occurred, what conclusions were arrived at, and if you could clearly indicate what is going to occur for the next phases of this engagement and consultation process. We'd like to have some guidance as to what's going to happen, and we're only learning about it piecemeal. The first phase ended on the 27th of February with a final roundtable. There were approximately 20 in the entire cycle. There were about 2,000 respondents on our online consultation, and we received many written submissions throughout the country. Can we have that? Can we have the results of the online consultation? Can we have something in writing that reports what happened? Or yes, there shall be a report of the first phase, which covered the various themes that I indicated earlier. Access to the EI, simplification of the system, seasonal workers, the reduction of the portion that are paid in EI for autonomous workers, and we were finishing this late spring, probably late April or May. So next time we take a look at your website, we'll be able to find all this information. Great. Now, as for temporary foreign workers, I'm sure you know that we have a severe labor shortage in Canada in all sectors, particularly SMEs, small and medium enterprises. In the food processing sector, there's crises throughout the country, even in my riding, where the labor impact studies is sheer hell. Businesses are calling us. They have no answers. They're the time lags are getting worse, and if we don't get sufficient answers, the work permits go out of date, they expire. So why all these delays? How can it be fixed? How will it be fixed? And how can we improve the response time from government sources for this program?
To just give a short response, and then I'll turn it to my colleague Nisa Tuman to speak to the LMIA issues you identified, Madame Chabot. First and foremost, we are very aware of the pressures that the industry is under right now. Minister Qualtrough has asked us to look at measures to support the employers in addressing these pressures across the many sectors and occupations that are feeling them right now.
Excuse me, Madame Chabot?
Il n'y a pas de traduction, Monsieur le Président.
I'm not getting it either.
Je vais passer la parole à Nisa jusque la translation est en mesure d'être capable. Nisa?
Oui, merci de la question, Monsieur le Président. Donc, on comprend.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know that the current situation is very difficult. Principally, if we examine the situation, during this period of pandemic, as the member mentioned, exceptional demand for more temporary foreign workers in various sectors, particularly the food and agri-food sector in Canada. We work closely with our minister on an action plan to improve our level of service and to accelerate the processing of the various requests and to minimize negative impacts on the work and labor market. Particularly in the province of Quebec, we're working very closely with our counterparts within the Immigration and Citizenship departments or ministries in Quebec. It's a jointly undertaken process to examine the labor markets and to arrive at a solid recommendation as to satisfying these requests for more labor access by the part of employers, not only to fulfill their actual current needs, but also to ensure that there is some protection and security for these workers that come from abroad. In particular,
Madame Chabot, your time has concluded. Now to Madame Zerillo for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm just going to note that I am going to speak about residential schools, so I just wanted to give everyone a heads up about that. So today is World Tuberculosis Day, and I see many of my colleagues wearing a ribbon, and it's a day of reflection. I speak of how tuberculosis was used as a weapon in Canada to support genocidal policies to infect First Nations children in residential schools. So that's where I come to this committee from today, from that space. We have a lot of work to do in Canada to end ongoing discrimination of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. And I would ask the witnesses today is what programs and budget items can be shared with this committee in the main estimates that address the needs of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
I'm going to ask Karen Robinson, our CFO, to respond initially to this question. Any other witnesses that may want to come in?
Thank you very much for your question. We have a few programs actually that are targeted at our Indigenous communities. The first one I'll speak to that's in the estimates is the Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Transformation, and there's $299 million included in these main estimates. And then, if you'll just bear with me, we have about 50 programs. There's also support to Indigenous learners. That includes 3.8 million in these main estimates. And sorry, I've got another one. I apologize because there's quite a few. We also have Indigenous labor market programming, and that is a total of 297.6 million in these main estimates, which includes funding for both the Indigenous skills and employment training, as well as skills and partnerships fund. Thank you. It will take me a few minutes to hunt down more than that. Thank you for your patience.
Mr. Chair, maybe they could be supplied to the committee after. And I just wonder if there's anything on housing that would be one that I would be interested in. I'm not sure if it would be in this, but if there's something there and that's easy to find, I'd like to hear about that one, but the rest can come later.
Yes, Madame Zerillo, and anytime it's a detail, you can ask the witness to provide or more factual information in writing back to the committee. Continue with your question. I believe it was on housing.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stay on a topic of discrimination, and I wanted to speak specifically about the women who recently won a case through the Social Security Tribunal as they were discriminated against because they were pregnant. And I note that there is in the mandate letter for the minister that's coming later is not much of a gender lens, I guess I would say, and we know that women are discriminated against at work and diverse genders. And I also see that we want to get more supports to get more people living with a disability into the workforce. So I'm concerned, again, that discrimination will be part of their experience. So I'm just wondering how much in the main estimates is held in the budget to take Canadians fighting for their human rights to court.
Thank you for the question. We actually would not have it that broken down like that into the main estimates. I know our CFO was checking her book at this time. We can speak to you though about the recent challenge and specific to that on the tribunal. I could turn to Catherine Demers if you'd like to hear some information on that. Catherine?
Hi, what I can say is that the Canada Employment Insurance Commission has submitted an application to seek leave to appeal to the SST Appeal Division on this case, which was granted. And the matter is before the SST. So I would not be in a position to offer more comment on this particular case.
Well, do you want to move on to another question?
Sure. How much time do I have?
You have a minute and 25. You've lost some.
Okay, I just wanted to revisit then just around the gender lens and a feminist recovery. So I note that, in skills development and labor, there's a lot of talk about very important industries to Canada, like natural resources, real estate, construction, but I didn't see a lot of talk about the care economy. So I just wanted to ask in the main estimates if there is any additional investment in care economy, and I'm specifically talking about care work that majority done by women.
Ben, for a moment. resume. Madame Zerillo, we'll give you a minute and a half.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. So I just wanted to go back to the gender lens and even gender-based analysis. So as I was saying, under the skills development and labor in the minister's mandate letter, there is talk of investments for important sectors in our economy like natural resources, real estate, construction. But I wanted to ask specifically about the care economy and investments in areas of the economy that are led by women: healthcare, childcare, long-term care, domestic support. Just wondering if there's any news you can share in the main estimates on investments with the gender lens, and maybe any gender-based analysis that was done in putting this mandate letter together in regards to skills, development, and labor.
Thank you for the question. I'd ask Andrew Brown if he's able to comment on this question, please.
Great. Thanks, Lori, and thanks for the question. I think certainly the care economy that's been raised there, we know to be a part of the economy that is really dominated by women, and certainly there is work underway. I think that one of the things that we've noted during the pandemic has been the importance of workers in the care economy, healthcare workers, people working in long-term care facilities, and so forth. And so one of the other things that has been noted has been a lack of sufficient workers in that sector across the country. And one of the things that's necessary there is to invest to in actually create training opportunities to be able to find more workers to provide support in terms of care and long-term care, personal care. So there is work underway right now, programs that have been launched and that are already now training workers to provide additional support in the sector. And that's work that is continuing.
Zerillo, and thank you, Mr. Brown. Now to Mr. Leipert for 5 minutes. Mr. Leipert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I am a little disappointed that we didn't get an overview of some of the accomplishments that this particular department is embarking on. I'm looking at the mandate letters, and there are all kinds of strategies that have been asked for, these sorts of things. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I mean, this is a government that's it's pretty well known that can't get anything done. And now with this new coalition with the NDP, it will be even more difficult for departments to get anything accomplished. So I'll start by asking, what progress has been made to date on the employment strategy for Canadians with disabilities that was called for in the mandate letter? Is that anything commenced, or where are we on that?
Krista.
Sorry about that. Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to take that one. I'm happy to take it if you want, but maybe I can just speak generally about the Disability Inclusion Action Plan, which is one of the minister's principal mandate commitments that is in her letter. The minister has put out over in the last year a framework around the Disability Inclusion Action Plan, which includes, as you mentioned, as one of the key pillars of that, an employment strategy for persons with disabilities. As part of the plan and the employment strategy, the department has undertaken significant consultations over the last several months, including an online survey that had 8,600 respondents, and provided an overview of what are some of the more important issues that are facing persons with disabilities in Canada today. We've also held roundtables specifically focused on the employment strategy, and Andrew could speak potentially to that, as well as on the Canada Disability Benefit, which is one of the cornerstones of the plan. And work is also underway with disability organizations. We've provided significant funding to them to also engage with persons with disabilities, as well as through our national Indigenous organizations, to have a distinctions-based approach to engagement on the plan, including the employment strategy.
All right. Do you see with this new coalition formed with the NDP, obviously the NDP is going to be demanding a number of conditions, and do you see starting from scratch again, because we're now under a different regime, and I would presume you'll be asking some different sorts of questions as you try to develop that strategy to get the support of the left wing of the party, commonly called the New Democratic Party.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We don't have a comment on that particular question. We continue to work on the minister's mandate letter as we've been requested to throughout this term.
But many of the things that are included in this mandate letter are going to be impacted by the fact you got this new agreement. Has the minister not had any discussions with department officials to say we have to look at this in a different way than we might have before this coalition was formed?
We continue to have conversations with the minister on a mandate letter as they've been indicated to us at the beginning of the term, and that's the work that we are doing.
All right. Well, how about let's try the Canada Student Loans and Canada Apprentice Loans. Where are we with any progress on that?
Atik Raman would be happy to take that question.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. As you may already be aware, that interest charged on Canada student loans and apprentice loans, those interests have been waived until March 2023. As you also know, that we work with our provincial student aid programs to implement any initiative that the federal government takes. So with respect to minister's mandate of eliminating interest on student loans and apprentice loans, they are already in place for until March 2023, and we have been consulting with our provincial partners as well as a service provider to determine the next steps on that one. Thank you.
Okay. I also see in the mandate letter.
Short question, please.
Well, the seems like there is a desire to work with the Minister of Natural Resources around what this government calls a just transition, whatever that means. Is the department doing anything differently in light of the Ukraine crisis and the obvious lack of fossil fuel, natural gas, oil around the world? Because of this, in lieu of the mandate letter?
Thank you for the question. I'll just ask one of my colleagues if they want to come in on the just transition. I will say to you that the department is looking at a number of initiatives right now with respect to Ukraine. They range from everything from supporting women and children coming into the country to ensuring people can get access to services, including things like social insurance numbers, access to support programs, access to employment readiness types of initiatives as well. So these things are ongoing on a day-to-day basis as we're looking at the unfolding situation in Ukraine.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald, and thank you, Mr. Leipert. We'll now go to Mr. Coteau for 5 minutes. You have
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the department that's here talking to us about many of these great initiatives inside of the captured in the mandate letter. I guess I want to talk a little bit about apprenticeship programs. I know that in the mandate letter it does mention just strengthening an apprenticeship program. Maybe you can take a minute just to talk about the vision for the apprenticeship program captured in the mandate letter.
I'll ask Andrew Brown if he could take this question.
Sure, and happy to take that question and speak to apprenticeships. And I think one of the things that's really important is that there's recognition that skilled trades are vital to Canada's economy, and that apprenticeships are really what help skilled workers and especially young people starting their career to connect with businesses and find well-paying jobs. So that's one of the reasons that the government is investing over $470 million over 3 years to establish a new apprenticeship service. And it's going to help create an estimated 55,000 jobs by providing small and medium-sized employers with $5,000 for the hiring of a first-year apprentice, an additional $5,000 for hiring an apprentice from an underrepresented group. So this program will also help small and medium-sized enterprises by providing them with supports that they need to increase their participation in apprenticeship.
I'm going to jump in. I have a bit of time, but I do appreciate that. I wanted to drill down a bit more into the apprenticeship program and the target audience. Who it's going to serve. I was looking on the website at Stats Canada. It said there are about, I think the number is around 400, just under 400,000 young people, or people in general, I should say, in the apprenticeship programs across the country. When I looked at the numbers, there was about 12% were female. Do you have numbers that specifically speak to Indigenous and people of color, like the percentages, and do we track that type of information?
So I can say that certainly we are working hard to increase diversity among apprentices and get a more broad range, more representation among Canadians into the skilled trades. That's one of the reasons, as you may have heard in my description, that part of the program is actually focusing on underrepresented groups. Now, with respect to data specifically, I haven't got those numbers available. I know that that's one of the areas that we are continuing to work on and to develop so that we've got a better sense of the proportion of underrepresented groups in apprentices, in apprenticeships, but really in our skilled trades across the country.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brown. How much time do I have left, Mr. Chair?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? So I'll keep going. Mr. Brown, going into communities where, there communities that are underrepresented, I think is a great strategy. The labor shortage that exists within many different sectors can really use an influx of new people into those sectors, and the apprenticeship programs will do that. Can you talk about any of the specific strategies you may be using to attract, more females, more Indigenous, people, Black people into those programs? Because traditionally, and I've spent some time around labor. It's usually based on the connections on the ground rather than government programs pulling people up into those opportunities. So if you can talk a little bit about some of the strategy there, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I think what I could speak to there is some of the investments through what's known as the Union Training and Innovation Program, and this is also related to apprenticeships. And so that, starting in 22-23 fiscal year to support more apprenticeships opportunities and partnerships in the Red Seals trades. And I really speak to this because the new investments in the Union Training and Innovation Program will continue to target greater representation and participation from women, Indigenous people, newcomers, persons with disabilities, Black and racialized communities. And so this is work that is being done in conjunction with unions to encourage and to increase participation again in the skilled trades.
Chair, thank you so much.
Maintenant, Madame Chabat.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to come back on the temporary workers program, if I may. In your previous response, you said that because of these delays in the LMIAs, And in Quebec, you're having some discussions currently? Well, yes, I agree, but we'd like to see it. It would be a lot easier if Quebec would just be able to manage this program rather than having it steered from Ottawa, because these delays are just totally unexplainable. There are 11 organizations in the food processing and beverage processing organizations which have gotten together on this issue of labor shortages. It's 25% shortages in this sector, and they propose very concrete short-term responses. They want to sit down and look at long-term solutions. Do you have any answers to these people? What explains the fact that we can't have a system that's just in time for labor needs? There are shortages for all sorts of reasons, of course, but really, we are really doing a disservice to this sector. What can you say? What can you tell us that getting rid of these delays? Thank you for the question, Madame Chabot. Through you, Mr. Chair. As to the process to improve and accelerate the process of these permits throughout Canada, we're currently implementing a number of adjustments and changes in our processes and our procedures in order to accelerate the decision-making process and the recommendations that come from those for the employers. We've made some internal adjustments to simplify and streamline our process. We are looking at a standardized process nationwide so that files are treated equitably at the same rate from one coast to the other. We're also recruiting more staff in order to meet the internal demand and to accelerate the process even more. For the situation in Quebec, there's been a very, very acute increase in demand compared to the other provinces and territories for manpower. And in Quebec, as the minister has already announced, we have struck an agreement between Canada and Quebec to simplify the process and to ensure that we do respond to the employer's needs and satisfy this shortage of labor and manpower that you have pointed out. Well, this agreement, with which I'm fairly familiar, simplified measures, but it's not that simple. I'm talking to you about businesses and labor in Quebec, of course. Since September, they've received no response. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to carry on with my questioning around gender lens, but I wanted to start by just sharing that last night, late in the night, I received a message from one of my constituents who has family escaping the Ukraine. They are in Romania right now, a mother with 2 children that has all of the infrastructure she needs when she gets to Canada, but can't make her way here because she needs biometrics to pass through the visa applications, and that isn't possible. And I just wanted to share, Mr. Chair, that she's there in Romania with only $200, and yet she can't get a biometrics appointment until the 29th of April, which is 9 days after the expiration of their visa. So I just wanted to share that that's how I'm coming to the table today with those thoughts on my mind. Getting back to the gender lens, I just wanted to ask about the modernization of EI. And I think some of these legacy policies were made before we really thought about women in work and diverse genders coming to work and persons with disabilities coming to work. But I just wanted to understand if staff could share with us how the gender lens is being applied to the modernization of EI and that work.
I'd be happy to take that question. Thank you for the question. One of the key objectives of DEI modernization work that we're doing is looking at ways to ensure that all workers have access to EI, and the EI program is more inclusive and stronger and simplified. So we're looking at all aspects of the program in terms of administrative simplifications, program simplifications, but also access issues with respect to workers losing their jobs, but also with respect to families, parents experiencing life events for the birth of a child, but also illness, for example. And a key area of discussion through the consultations has been focused on ensuring that we understand well the issues with respect to the changing needs of families, including working mothers. So Minister Qualtrough has met with employer groups, worker groups, and various groups representing families, including adoptive parents, for example, to understand these changing needs.
Madame Zerillo.
I'm just going to carry on with that question. Is just wondering if any of that consultation, maybe even just one or two things that were learned, could be shared with the committee.
With pleasure. We are compiling the information and doing the analysis now, but certainly a lot of interest raised from worker and labor groups and family groups around access in terms of eligibility rules for accessing the programs, but also in terms of flexibilities for using benefits, parental, maternity benefits, and for example, interest in terms of looking at the weeks available of benefits for adoptive parents compared to birth mothers and other birth parents in general. So there was a lot of interest in that aspect, a lot of interest in simplification issues as well, and flexibilities in general.
Thank you, Madame Zerillo. We'll continue with Madame Gladue, and as soon as the minister arrives, then we'll move to that part. So, Madame.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to members from the department. I'm happy when the minister shows up to interrupt my time to have her make her comments and perhaps have a chance to ask her a question. I have some questions on the mandate and some questions that are more general. First of all, I want to talk about people coming from the Ukraine are going to need English as a second language, English upgrades. And typically, I think it's this department that has been responsible for budgeting that. And I didn't see anything in the estimates. Have there been discussions about offering that kind of training help to the Ukrainians that are coming?
Thank you for the question. I'll maybe start off, and maybe some of my colleagues may want to jump in here, but we're in the process right now of looking at what programs that we can leverage that exist already in the department, and also what additional programs that we can add, whether that's through a grant and contribution agreement, as an example, or through some of the programs we have, like our job bank, as an example, while at the same time leveraging what's already in place in terms of some of our community resources, and then seeing if we can build on those to meet the vast array of needs that we expect people arriving in Canada from Ukraine will have. Education, English as a second language, support for daycare, housing, childcare, clothing. So we're in the process right now looking at a number of those measures and what the department can contribute in that regard.
Madame Gladue, I'm advised the minister is ready, so I'll take direction from the committee. Do you want to pause for a moment while him, or do you want to continue with your question?
Let's hear from the minister as long. Okay. Can I have the rest of my time to ask her questions after that?
I'm open.
Let's do it.
But we'll conclude this, if it's the direction of the committee, then we'll conclude the first round of this meeting, and now we will move to the second, and we will suspend for a moment while the minister is coming online. Thank you, witness. I believe you may be staying for while the minister is here. They may be staying online. Yeah. So we'll suspend for a couple of minutes while the minister is brought into the meeting virtually. Back. Welcome, Minister Qualtrough, to the committee. The members are looking forward to your appearance here, and as well as departmental officials, Jean-Francois Tremblay, Deputy Minister, Laurie McDonald, who stays with us, Senior Associate Deputy, and Karen Robinson, Chief Financial Officer. Madam Minister, I understand you have opening remarks. You now have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to join you today. I'll be speaking to you first about main estimates. So the funding for Employment and Social Development Canada represents a total of $87.4 billion in planned budgetary expenditures. This is a net increase of $5 billion over last year's mains. And this is primarily due to significant increases for the early learning and childcare agreements with provinces and territories, and for the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program. We're also forecasting important increases to the Old Age Security Pension and the Guaranteed Income Supplement. So these increases are actually being offset by a decrease for the 3 statutory temporary recovery benefits. I'll now speak quickly to my mandate items so we can get to questions, where I'll account for some of the specifics of estimates. So, supporting workers impacted by the pandemic, modernizing EI, improving the temporary foreign worker program, building a strong skilled workforce, ensuring post-secondary education is more affordable, and making Canada a more barrier-free, disability-inclusive country. So as Minister of Employment, Workforce Development, and Disability Inclusion, I'm responsible for ensuring workers in Canada are supported. Most recently, this has meant the creation of the Canada Worker Lockdown Benefit. During the rise of Omicron in December, we expanded the definition of a lockdown so that more workers would be eligible, and this expanded eligibility was extended and ended on March 12th. We also increased the number of weeks available under the Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit and the Canada Recovery Sickness Benefits, which, as you see in the main estimate, shows a combined decrease of almost $6.5 billion. We're also focused on modernizing EI. One key lesson, of course, we learned in the pandemic was just how important employment insurance is and how much stronger Canada's system could be. And I'd like to thank, of course, the members of this committee for your excellent study on this issue, which included your 20 recommendations, which I regularly turn to see if we're on track and to see how close the feedback I'm getting is to what you all spent time recommending. On February 17th, we wrapped up our phase 1 of our consultations, and we held 10 national sessions and 11 regional sessions. We did a parallel online survey for Canadians and got more than 1,900 responses and 60 written submissions. And what we heard was that employment insurance could be more fair and more inclusive. It could be more simpler to navigate. It should be actually more simpler to navigate and get benefits to Canadians quicker. We also heard that we need a program that supports workers and employers, both when there's high unemployment and when there are labor shortages. And I'm pleased to advise that we're going to publish a summary report soon on what we heard. And the second phase of consultation will begin in April. Now, ensuring workers are safe and supported is also a critical part of my mandate, and that includes all workers. Another key priority for my department is in addressing systemic challenges that are in the temporary foreign worker program. So I have publicly committed to a series of actions to improve upon the quality and timeliness of our inspections. And as we prepare for the 2022 agricultural season, my department has already taken steps to implement these actions. And we are now truly better able to support our inspection staff through supplementary training, enhanced tools, and improved workload management. I'm also working with the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food to help address labor shortages in farming and food processing. Earlier this year, we streamlined the processing for many of these employers, and we're working with the Minister of Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship to establish a new trusted employer system. So you'll see about $19 million additional in the mains for Migrant Worker Support Network, and that's to enhance the temporary foreign worker program. So we also know that Canada is experiencing a shortage of available workers across many sectors and regions. And to grow our economy, I'm taking action to maximize workforce participation by breaking down barriers to employment and by helping workers upskill to adapt to a changing labor market. To this end, I'm committed to expanding the Foreign Credential Recognition Program to help more newcomers enter the Canadian job market quicker. Yesterday morning, I announced funding for 9 organizations that will help thousands of qualified newcomers enter our healthcare workforce more quickly. And I'm also moving forward with a disability employment strategy to help employers make their workplaces more inclusive and reach this untapped talent pool. Another priority is to promote the skilled trades as first career choices for young people in diverse populations. And we've launched the National Skills Trades Advertising Campaign that provides information on training, federal funding, and in-demand trades by region. We also have committed to doubling the Union Training and Innovation Program, or UTIP, which is a very popular program. And moving forward, we are moving forward with our apprenticeship service, which will provide more training opportunities for Canadians pursuing a career in the trades. Just last week, we announced new investments in Halifax and Sudbury through the UTIP program that will ensure more people get trained skills such as carpentry and other essential in-demand skilled trades. It's a big one, my mandate, but it also includes ensuring that Canada's workforce is ready to meet a low carbon future. We're doing this by investing in our new sectoral workforce solution program. So this, to build talent for the clean economy, we're also committed to launching our new Clean Jobs Training Center. As you can see, there's lots going on, but to make life more affordable, a critical part of my mandate is to make post-secondary education more accessible in Canada. To do this, we've committed to permanently eliminating federal interest on Canada student loans. We'll also making repayment systems more flexible and less burdensome on Canadians through multiple measures, including increasing the repayment assistance program threshold to $50,000 for borrowers who are single, and allowing new parents to pause repayments until their youngest child reaches the age of 5. We're also looking to increase debt forgiveness for doctors, nurses, and nurse practitioners who work in rural and remote areas, and we're committed to increasing this debt forgiveness by 50%. So, of course, before I conclude, I want to turn to a part of my mandate that is close to my heart, as you know, and that's our work to improve the lives of Canadians with disabilities. No Canadian with a disability should live in poverty. No one should. One of my key priorities is to create a new Canada Disability Benefit, and consulting on its design with members of the disability community, provinces and territories, and other stakeholders. Once implemented, such a benefit could help lift hundreds of thousands of working age Canadians with disabilities out of poverty. And I'd like to take a moment to really thank those members who have contacted me personally with your support to retable this legislation. I'm committed to doing so in the House as soon as possible. You know, this benefit is a cornerstone piece of our new Disability Inclusion Action Plan. This plan has 4 pillars: financial security, employment, inclusive communities, and a modern approach to disability. In the spirit of nothing without us, we are committed to working closely with the disability community on the Disability Inclusion Action Plan and the design of the new benefit, because persons with disabilities know best what we need, the challenges we faced, and what barriers most prevent us from having financial security. And I'm happy to point out to you that over $78 million for the Enabling Accessibility Fund and over $67 million for the Opportunities Fund is reflected in the mains for persons with disabilities. So I'll leave it there, Chair. I hope that's demonstrated the breadth and strength of my commitments and my mandate priorities, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you, Madam Minister, for coming in a couple of minutes under your time. Now to Madame Gladue for 6 minutes. Madame, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing today. I want to start with some of the items in your mandate letter. The modernizing of the employment insurance program. I agree that it could be more fair. Now, my understanding of this program is that people pay in as employees. They pay their premiums, and if they've worked enough hours, then when they lose their job, they receive that benefit. But my understanding is also that in this pandemic, people that lost their jobs because they didn't want to take a vaccine then were prevented from getting employment insurance, even though they had contributed and they had met the hour criteria. Can you explain this?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, thank you, and thanks for the question. It is one that I've had often. I'll start by saying, you know, the science is really clear that vaccines are safe and effective in reducing the spread of COVID-19, and we think it's prudent for our workplaces and good for the economy that they are as safe as possible. Each EI application is assessed on a case-by-case basis. But if an employer has a mandatory vaccination policy, and an employee is found to have not complied with that or has voluntarily quit because of that, they typically wouldn't be eligible to receive EI benefits, just like they wouldn't be eligible in the case of other policies that an employer has. It's a compliance issue with an employer policy, not necessarily a function of the EI system. But as I said, I don't make those determinations, and each EI application is assessed on a case-by-case basis. So it's a matter of non-compliance with an employer policy.
It certainly does seem unfair. I noticed in your mandate letter that you have a goal of increasing the number of personal support workers by 50,000, which is good to hear because we all know that we're short and long-term care facilities are suffering. Now, is this target before or after the 22,000 personal support workers were fired for not having vaccines?
These are two separate issues. It's a completely different conversation that we would have to have with provincial and territorial governments who are responsible for dictating employment requirements and standards for personal support workers. But our goal in the training side of it is, having recognized this gap, is to train these individuals as quickly as possible so that they can be part of the healthcare sector.
Okay, thank you. And the disability benefit, I'm very interested in this. You know, there were private members' bills that the Conservatives brought forward to try to address the issue that when disabled people want to work, they actually lose their benefits. And so it's sort of a punishment to them for going to work, and that keeps them in the cycle of poverty. These new benefits that you're designing, will they address this concern so that the disabled who want to work will not lose their benefits when they do?
A really important question. And in fact, the number one preoccupation of mine on this benefit is to make sure that this benefit doesn't disincentivize or punish work, and that fairly incentivizes work, I would say, so that people are better off working, and also so that other benefits, and particularly at the provincial territorial level where disability supports are kind of primarily housed, that we're not replacing benefits, that we are actually making people's lives better and people are getting lifted out of poverty. Really important question. Thank you.
Very good. And speaking of poverty, I have a lot of seniors in my riding, and obviously the cost of everything is going up, gas and groceries and heating, and people can't always afford to do all of those. And so I wanted to ask about the policy that awarded increases to seniors over the age of 75, but excluded those between 65 and 75. Is there a possibility that the government would reverse that policy in recognition that, inflation is hitting all of the people that are on a fixed income equally?
Again, a really important question. We have committed to increasing writ large the OAS, and increasing over age 75 is a recognition of the increased costs of medication, of accessibility issues that people face at 75. There's much less likelihood of working by that age, whereas we find people between 65 and 75 do sometimes have another source of employment income, but it's not my file. I apologize, colleague, but I just don't have any further detail. You'll have to ask the Minister of Seniors.
No problem. And one final question. We have heard of this NDP Liberal coalition, and that there's been agreements made in the back room about what programs might be added. Can you sort of clarify what, if anything, will be added to the estimates that we're seeing here in order to appease the NDP?
Well, what I can say is that, the agreement allows Parliament to function, I would say, exceedingly better. It will allow us to get areas of mutual interest, to move forward on areas of mutual interest, including pharmacare, including climate change, and certainly from the perspective of the disability community, dental care is a welcome addition to that list. I can tell you, I'm not sure how. Again, they're not my files, so I think it would be best to talk to another minister about the details of those particular programs.
Thank you, Minister.
Madame Gladue. Now, Madame Shabat for 6 minutes. Oh,
Chair,
sorry. Yes. My apologies. Mr. Long for 6 minutes. Sorry, Mr. Long. You have the floor. 6 minutes.
Monsieur Long, si vous voulez me donner votre 5 minutes, on va le prendre en plus du bien.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to say I'm sharing my time with MP Van Bynen. Minister Qualtrough or Carla, look, welcome and thank you for coming back to speak with us. It's always a pleasure to have you back, and I thank you so much for the work you do on behalf of so many Canadians. As we know, the Canada Disability Benefit was tabled in the last Parliament, but died on the order paper. I'm very happy to see that it remains part of your mandate, and I'm really looking forward to fulfilling this important platform promise. In New Brunswick, approximately 23% of the working age population live with a disability. This benefit will be crucial to those that live in my riding of St. John Rothesay and across Canada. I actually tabled a motion to study how a benefit such as this would reduce poverty among working age Canadians with disabilities, and how the federal government can improve access to federal programs and services for persons with disabilities. I look forward to getting to work on it in the near future. Minister, could you explain the importance of the Canada Disability Benefit and exactly what you believe it will achieve? And can you provide any insight on when my constituents can expect this legislation to come into place? Thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you for the question, and thanks for having me. As I said in my remarks, no one should live in poverty. And right now we have working age Canadians with disabilities are twice as likely to live in poverty than those without disabilities. 22% of Canadians with disabilities who are working age live under the poverty line. That's 1 in 5. That's just, it's shocking. And, poverty rates go down by half when persons with disabilities reach age 65. And you know why? It's because they now have access to the GIS. So, it's a big gap between the CCB disability, which ends when an individual becomes an adult, and the 65-year-old, the 65 when someone is able to access GIS. So, really this has the potential to lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty. We are committed in looking at introducing this as soon as we possibly can. I'm super grateful to the support from members of all parties who have indicated that they want this benefit to move forward. 45 senators wrote us a letter saying that we want to fast track it. It's very exciting, and I look forward to tabling it as soon as we can, given the legislative agenda schedule. Sorry.
Mute, Mr. Long. Mr. Long, you're on mute.
Thank you for that, Minister, and over to MP Van Bynen.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate you taking the time to bring us up to date with respect to your mandate letter and also with respect to the funding that's required going forward. An item on your mandate letter is to continue to support the work of the national campaign to promote the skilled trades as a first choice careers for young people and diverse populations. Now, Blue Door Shelters is an example of an organization that's providing emergency housing in York Region that supports women and children and families from the risk of experiencing homelessness. And they've started Construct, which is a program that provides entry-level experiences in the construction and the home improvements industry. That's to develop an interest in pursuing the trades and to become self-reliant, and at the same time generate some income for a social enterprise. The program is building on support, and some of the supports that you're contemplating may apply. I fully support programming or promoting the skilled trades as a first choice career, and I'd be interested in knowing if you could provide us with an overview of this work and update us on how that's progressing, specifically if there's a benefit for the social enterprise programs.
Well, thank you. I actually think a lot about how we can get young people in particular to seriously consider a skilled trade as a career of first choice. We desperately need, our workforce desperately needs skilled trades workers. We've got about 700,000 skilled trade workers who will retire between 2019 and 2028, I think it is. And these are good, good paying, professional, exciting, in-demand jobs. And so historically, these jobs have been second choice careers. And we have actually put in place a strategy and have launched a campaign to educate, to reframe the conversation, to get young people in particular excited about a career in the skilled trades. We've actually been working with industry partners. We've formed an advisory group. We've launched this campaign. It's wrapping up at the end of this year. We're trying to, again, get the conversation shifted, promote our apprenticeship strategy, promote the supports we have with UTIP, for example, the Union Training and Innovation Program, to really change the conversation around this as a first career choice. Instead of the average entry into the skilled trades, when I came into this portfolio was around 27 or 28. And we want people to be excited about these jobs, these good paying jobs. And we desperately need our workforce to have the richness of skilled trades workers in it in order to get what we need to get done to build our economy.
Okay. Do I have time?
10 seconds. Short question.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Van Bynen. Madame Chabot, pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. 6 minutes and 10 seconds. But anyway, thank you very much, Madam Minister, to be with us today. And I think that we can dedicated you several responsibilities in your mandate letter. It's quite a few pages long. I imagine you're in consultation. As you know, that's been very much appreciated, particularly among groups of unemployed persons and with the union groups. The Prime Minister, nonetheless, confided in you for this mandate so that between now and this summer of 2022, you result with a more inclusive and complete system. And you said in the press that you're convinced that you're going to meet this deadline, June 2022, which the Prime Minister has set for you. Do you think that you'll be able to live up to that engagement? And next June, we will have a guarantee that we can count on a modernized EI system. Thank you for the question. I don't recall having made that engagement.
Getting this right, and I've been very clear that we need to do this in stages and phases, that we want to get the more agreed upon or more in consensus elements built into the system more quickly and take the time we need to dig in on the elements for which there might not be consistence. And I think specifically around a self-employed benefit, when I think of that, we have to consider the costs of doing this, and we have to phase it in through costs. We have to consider the need to make system changes. What I can tell you is that we are putting forth a bold vision for EI, where benefits are accessible and adequate and address the needs of workers today. And that will be done as quickly as possible, ensuring that we take into account all the factors that I've just put forth.
Madame la Ministre, vous n'êtes pas sans savoir que...
Madam Minister, I'm sure that you know that the needs were quite known in September of 2020 rather, and you have to look at the overall system. We have to make a targeted response to actual needs, and I could probably find the article where you were quoted as saying what I said, that the reform is required now, in fact. I do have a further question. My colleague asked you some questions on gender lens and gender approach. We know that the EI penalizes women at least two ways. The criteria for admissibility, they often have typical pink-collar jobs, and then there's the issue of maternity leave. Women have fought and won victories to prove that there were discriminatory rules. If they lose their jobs, they have no right to unemployment insurance. You were very considerate to the concerns of these women who have no access to some of these benefits, but nonetheless, the government is actually appealing the decision before the SST. Do you think that we'll be able to overcome this discrimination against women?
Sir, I want to assure you that while we may be implementing EI reform in stages, we will not be doing this in piecemeal. We're thinking about the entire system and how every decision and issue we address or don't address impacts others. So it is a systemic reform that will be implemented over time. In terms of the issues you speak about, absolutely, I remain committed to addressing the inequities that women face in the EI system, whether it's the stacking rules or that sometimes result in women who have access regular benefits getting to the end of those benefits and having no weeks left in the 50-week limit to access maternity or parental benefits. These are the issues that are driving the reform that we're trying to do. I can't, of course, speak to one particular case that's before the Social Security Tribunal decision because of privacy issues, but I can assure you that reforms will address inequities faced by women.
J'ai plus de son. J'entends plus, Monsieur le Président. J'entends plus rien.
Je suis fini.
I wasn't able to capture some of that there. I didn't hear it. Can you hear me? Another minute? Thank you. Conservative colleague posed a question of depriving workers of EI and of emergency benefits, either through sick leave workers who don't meet the vaccine requirements would be losing these benefits. This is not part of the this was not necessarily a part of the EI system, but a decision taken by your government. And I think that this comes under federal jurisdiction. We know that these workers who are laid off or fired without pay are facing a double burden, a punitive one, because they won't have access to EI benefits. He said, insofar as public safety and health requires it, this measure will stand. Don't you think that's a little bit excessive to penalize people? And do you think that you will be removing this sanction?
Colleague, the Minister of Health, and others, including myself, contemplate next steps with respect to mandates, vaccine mandates. I can assure you that we will follow the science. The vast majority of businesses in this country are provincial jurisdiction, though the decisions whether they impose a mandatory vaccine requirement is a matter of their internal business policy. And of course, if someone loses a job or chooses to leave a job because they didn't follow an internal policy, that's again, in most cases would result in not being eligible for EI. I'm not talking about a situation where someone has a duty to accommodate and has a legitimate medical reason. So please, I think that's an important caveat. In terms of the federal public service, in terms of business workplaces that are currently under federal mandates, I think we will continue to follow the science, and we will continue to make decisions based on our commitment to ensure that our workplaces are healthy, and that benefits not only our citizens, but our economy as well.
Thank you, Minister Qualtrough. Madame Zerillo, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Minister. I am going to spend all of my time with you today on getting info for persons living with disabilities. So I'll start just by saying that with the rising cost of housing, rising cost of living, and more risk that will come to the disability community as changes in the mask mandates and other COVID protections are lifted, this becomes even more urgent. So the ASAP that you spoke of a couple of times today really matters. You mentioned that the legislative agenda was potentially a barrier to get the Canada Disability Benefit to the floor. And I'm wondering if you can tell the committee if this bill has been pushed back since November 2021, and if there are any remaining barriers getting it to the floor.
Well, thank you. And I certainly don't mean to say that it will be a barrier. It's more that other events such as the emergency benefits, from the fall, the Emergency Act, other things going on, in no way reflects the work that is being done already to prepare the groundwork for the disability benefit, the conversations that are ongoing with PT governments around how we're going to engage in negotiations once this benefit becomes law. I just don't have a date, which is why I'm hesitant, but I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that this isn't going to happen. It's just a matter of when, and I just can't tell you the date.
And I'm sure you know, Minister, that many in the disability community are anxiously and eagerly awaiting it. So is there anything this committee can do or members of this committee can do to try to advance that work or to assist in advancing that work?
Well, thank you. You know, I think like the Accessible Canada Act, we're going to have an opportunity with this piece of legislation to go above partisanship and deliver for Canadians with disabilities. So I know I've talked with members of all parties about their support for the disability benefit. It would be lovely if we all could agree to move it through the parliamentary process as quickly as possible. The more questions I can answer, once tabled, the bill will reflect the same. It will look the same as it did in June. And so any questions you have or any issues you have, it would be great to work together. And so once this is tabled, we can fast track it and deliver for Canadians with disabilities.
Thank you, Minister. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot is just around who will be eligible and the eligibility criteria. So I'm wondering if the eligibility criteria, you said it would be the same. Will there be eligibility criteria spelled out?
Yeah, and I guess from a point of view of parliamentary decorum, I would say the elements would be the same. I will not I can't opine on letter for letter, word for word, because I wouldn't want to in any way be out of line on this. But this legislation is really framework legislation in the spirit of Nothing Without Us, working, co-developing the benefit with the disability community. This creates a framework wherein we get the regulatory authority to work with provinces to ensure there are no clawbacks of this benefit, to ensure that the amount ultimately lifts people out of poverty. That's why we are funding Independent Living Canada to work with the disability community to recommend eligibility criteria. Of course, as we all know, it's not a business the federal government has been in historically, so we are hard pressed to find easy lists of people who could be eligible. We have, of course, the disability tax credit. We have, of course, people who get disability benefits through Veteran Affairs and CPP disability. But unlike, say, seniors, where we could identify everybody in this country who's over 65, we can't do that yet with disability because of the lack of data. And so we really need to understand the enormous challenge of defining eligibility criteria. And that work is already ongoing, but the legislation will give us the legal framework to basically bring the ball over the finish line, I would say. That's not an analogy. I think I just missed too. Anyway, you know what I mean?
Thank you very much, Minister. And that's good information. And I think you know that the NDP would like all of the everyone that qualifies provincially or is on a disability to automatically be eligible. So I'll leave that with you because
yes,
I don't.
That's an option for sure, and it's all in the mix.
Great. I had one more question for you. So I'm really concerned about discrimination in employment. So I'm very pleased to hear that we are going to do more to get people living with a disability employment opportunities. This is something that too needs to be modernized. I know that you agree with that. Many people living with a disability lost their employment disproportionately and have had a difficult time to gain it back. I'm worried about discrimination in the workplace as we move forward for persons with disabilities. What does the government have planned to protect workers so that their human rights are protected? And I ask that because human rights claims are very expensive. They're emotionally taxing. And right now, and in general, but even more so right now, human rights tribunals are overburdened and are taking a very, very long time to adjudicate cases.
Well, you've hit on the two things that matter so much to me. So, historically, more than 50% of the complaints to the Canadian Human Rights Commission have been on the ground of disability, and the vast majority of those in employment. And so we know that this is happening. That's why employment is a key pillar of our Disability Inclusion Action Plan, making sure that we put a standard for employment in place through the Accessibility Standards Canada, so that becomes part of the proactive regime of barrier identification, unburdening the individual from having to fight individual, case by case at the Human Rights Tribunal. They can lean on and expect their government to make that fight for them against their employer. So there's a lot going on in this space, including, education and awareness training for employers. And of course, this will be a key component of our employment strategy because it's the number one barrier to full participation by persons with disabilities in society writ large is discrimination on the grounds of employment.
Thank you, Madame Cirillo. Your time is up. Now to Mr. Ruff for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, part of your mandate letter includes a commitment to launch the Clean Jobs Training Center to help industrial, skill, and trade workers across sectors to upgrade or gain new skills to be on the leading edge of zero-carbon industry. As you may know, in my region, nuclear power is of major importance, and nuclear is arguably a vital part of any sensible response to climate change. Unlike the Green Bond Framework, will the Clean Jobs Training Center include training and skills to help workers transition to the nuclear industry, or will it exclude this important and innovative industry? Yes or no, Minister?
Sorry, that is absolutely, as we talk, and we're right now engaging stakeholders and other government departments on what that should include, and that is definitely a topic of conversation, but I can't weigh in either way on it yet.
Thanks, Minister. Please weigh in that it should be included. My next question is one that I've talked or brought up before in the House, and it's respect to support for the visually impaired and those with print disabilities. In last year's budget, the funding was cut, or there was no provision for long-term sustainable funding for NELS and SELA. The current funding envelope is very small, but the impact of this funding is significant, and the loss of NEL's and CELA's services to people with print disabilities in Canada will be devastating. Can you provide a very quick update on what is happening with this file and your commitment in your mandate letter to permanently fund support services that ensure equitable access to reading and other published works for Canadians with print disabilities?
Well, thank you. So I've assured both CELA and NELS that their funding levels will not go down for the next fiscal year as we work to permanently address this issue with them. So I've had a meeting with them recently where I've told them this, and so they can breathe easy while I continue to find the best path forward to permanently stabilize their funding. So we're on it, but they're good for the next year at least.
Well, thanks, Minister. Please stay on top of that to ensure that there is no shortage while you're working the long-term strategic plan. My next area of questions is around our ag sector, in particular our fruit and vegetable growers. Currently, due to under the LMIA process and whether they're temporary foreign workers or seasonal ags, there's audits being done with respect to housing standards. There's at the provincial and municipal levels integrity audits, labor audits, municipal zoning regulations, fire codes, etc. So some of these fundamental farmers to our food security are undergoing 8 audits in a given year. What is your role and ESDC's role to streamline this and take away this bureaucratic burden to our fruit and vegetable growers?
Really important question. Thank you. I recognize this is one of the most complex and convoluted programs that we have, partially as a function, of course, of the different levels of government and the different areas of responsibility. Not an excuse, that's just the reality. So one of the most important things I think we can do, in addition to creating the sector-specific agricultural labor strategy that the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food and I are working on with our producers and food processors, is to establish a trusted employer system. So this would significantly streamline application processes for Canadian companies hiring TFWs. So you can imagine a nexus equivalent where if you have a good compliance record, we wouldn't maybe require you to have an annual LMIA. We might extend the length of your LMIA. We might provide less inspections and do a more risk-based approach to inspection that lets us target the bad actors, if you will. But we know how burdensome this is, and I think you'll be very pleased with how we move forward to modernizing and streamlining these processes and I know it should have been done already, but we need to do this for our farmers.
Well, yeah, and I ask you to take that lead role at the federal level to help coordinate all these inspections or audits so that the farmers are only being impacted once, not multiple times. My final question, tied again to this, is you initiated the consultation period in response to COVID for the bunkhouses for many of these temporary or seasonal ag workers. That was concluded last December. What are the new, if any, standards that our employers are to abide by, and when are they coming?
Good question. So we released a What We Heard report on this, I believe mid-December. I don't have the date in front of me. I apologize. The next step is to hold a conversation, a roundtable with all the implicated actors or stakeholders, I guess I would say, to dig into what we heard and figure out what those standards should be. Working closely with PTs, trying to, again, untangle jurisdiction, because of course this is a primarily PT area, and the way during COVID we were able to be a little more rigorous was by using immigration regs because of the extraordinary times of COVID. But we need a system that does this, not a one of. So we're working on it.
Thank you, Mr. Ruff. I do need direction from the committee now. The bells are ringing, but they're 30-minute bells. They've been ringing about a little less than 5. Do you wish to continue on? And what's direction? Okay.
Good. Rounds. Are the ministers available? Either or. Thank you.
Yeah, and the minister's available. So thank you, Mr. Ruff. We'll now move to Mr. Collins for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Minister. Thanks for your attendance here today. And I'm going to be sharing, Mr. Chairman, please note my time with my friend and colleague, Mr. Koto. First question I have, Minister, is around a foreign credential recognition program that you highlighted in your opening. And, I've met over the years dozens of residents in my riding of Hamilton East Stony Creek who are healthcare workers, engineers, accountants, and other professionals who are anxious to share their expertise with us as part of our Canadian economy and contribute to with the training that they've received from wherever they've come from in the world. And so I know you made an announcement yesterday, and I was hoping that you could provide you could elaborate on the announcement and share with us the progress that we've made and you've made with the Foreign Credentials Recognition Program and what we might expect to see in 2022.
Well, thank you. I think that, we cannot underestimate the importance of newcomers to Canada's workforce and making sure that we are actually using their skills and talents and helping them get into the workforce as quickly as possible in their area of expertise. We're experiencing a shortage of available workers, and this is a labor tool ripe for us to use. What the Foreign Credentials Recognition Program does is it funds provincial and territorial regulatory bodies to enhance foreign credential recognition. So part of the funding goes to work to untangle some of the credential recognition challenges that individuals face. We also fund organizations to help newcomers navigate these complicated processes, and we fund organizations and employers to provide first Canadian work experiences in somebody's area of expertise or education. So those are kind of the three prongs of attack of this program. Try and streamline the processes, support organizations that are helping individuals access or get through these processes, and then actually give first work experience. The announcements we made yesterday for these 9 organizations did a combination of this. So working with a national group of nurses to help navigate and streamline nursing regulations in Ontario, supporting employers who want to hire newcomers and provide them that first Canadian experience, and supporting local organizations who work with newcomers and broader kind of wraparound service provision to, as one of the things they do, help them navigate and get their credentials recognized. So it's, I think we're going to see exciting things. We've increased the budget significantly for this program, and I think it's going to be it is a key prong of our approach to addressing labor shortages.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Chairman, I'll cede my time to Mr. Coteau at this point.
Mr. Coteau. Mr. Morris, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Coteau, and thank you, Chair. I want to start by acknowledging I'm now the third member from a third political party raising the Canada Disability Benefit this afternoon. And really, following on Mr. Long and Ms. Zarillo, really just amplifying the calls of Disability Without Poverty and so many others across the country who've been really putting in the work for years and years, including the principles that were referred to earlier. As the minister knows well, those principles are on the Disability Without Poverty website with respect to implementing the Canada Disability Benefit. I'd like to go further, yes, recognizing how important this is. That was referred earlier in this conversation, was referred to in question period yesterday, and in my conversation with the parliamentary secretary the day before. I understand the minister not able to share a timeline for when. So, in light of that, I wonder, knowing Minister Qualtrough, your support for the Canada Disability Benefit, if you could speak about the specific steps that have been taken over the last few months to move closer to making progress in the legislative agenda. If you could speak to the specific progress being made in order to fast track the reintroduction of the Canada Disability Benefit.
Well, thank you, Mr. Morris, and thank you for your relentless pursuit of this. I'm appreciative. We tabled the legislation last June. It died on the order paper. It was a clear foundational part of the Liberal Party platform in last election. It is in my mandate letter, and the Prime Minister and myself and all of our colleagues in Cabinet are committed to introducing this legislation. So I can tell you, as we've worked to move forward on many aspects of the disability file, this has been the unwavering kind of cornerstone of the work we're trying to do. It would be, of course, the flip side, as I have said, or you may have heard me say, of investments we make in employment. Ideally, the more people we get working, the better. But until we remove the barriers that we've put up as a society, until we recognize that we created this situation, we need to make sure people aren't living in poverty. So that's as much detail as I can think of, but I can assure you it's a top priority for our government, and it is simply a matter of when, not if. And it will happen.
Thank you, Mr. Maurice. Now to Madame Chabot.
Merci. Thanks once again, Mr. Chairman. Now, if I was going to ask you between now and June 2022, what would you be able to provide by way of information or reports, the beginnings of a new systematic reform on the EI system? Well, thank you for this opportunity to clarify our position.
Vision and a pathway for employment insurance. We're going to release what we heard in the findings of our initial round of discussions on access to EI. Of course, we are committed to increasing the weeks of sickness benefit to 26. That will happen this fall. We will be making decisions, and it will be heavily informed by what we heard on the ground during our consultations around the temporary measures that are set to expire at the end of September. And I can assure you, again, while perhaps an implementation will be phased and these conversations are not happening all at once, the vision that we put forth for an EI system, it remains the guiding principles, and this will not be piecemeal.
Vous parlez plus, Madame la Ministre, c'est ça?
Is that it? No, that's it. So if you can hear me, Madam Minister, I have another question on the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. I'm aware of the new agreement with the federal government and Quebec, of course, but it remains that reality for a number of producers in the agro, food, and beverage sector are very frustrated with all the delays that they've been facing this year. Many enterprises are suffering in receiving and getting their the impact studies, of course, and of course to get the people on the ground. So what are you doing to overcome these delays?
Assure you that we have been addressing the backlog of LMIAs and delays, and I know Lori's on the line. She could speak to where we are, but we weekly meet to see how things are going on a regional basis and ensure that those delays are being addressed. And I think we have good news, Lori, don't we? I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we're well on the way, if not having caught up.
We are in a good place, Minister. We've actually fixed our technology challenges. We've taken a significant decrease in the cases in Quebec. On agricultural, right now, agricultural LMIAs, we're averaging on 25 days to get those LMIAs through. So we're seeing a significant change, and our inventory has been reduced dramatically, and we're working very closely with our Quebec counterparts to address the issues that remain.
Thank you.
Madame Chabot, now Madame Zerillo for 2.5 minutes.
All right, I'm getting my 2.5 minutes. That's amazing. My last question is going to be, again, on disability, but intersectionally on First Nation, Inuit, and Métis that live with disabilities. And I'm wondering if there's anything in the main estimates that you could share with us, or even any additions in the main estimates that deal with support for First Nation, Inuit, Métis living with disabilities.
Well, I'm sorry I can't point to the exact line, but one of the things we're working on with on a distinctions basis is the Accessible Canada Act and its application within Indigenous communities and on reserve. There was a conscious decision made at the advice of Indigenous leaders to work in a parallel track on the application of the Accessible Canada Act. That work is being done. We've also built into a number of our programs on a more distinctions basis, specific streams, I would say, for people who for Indigenous persons with disabilities. I apologize for, I want to make sure I get my language correct. I'm thinking of ISETs, I'm thinking of our Canada Summer Job Program, I'm thinking of a couple of others whose names escape me, but it's really important that and in fact, I say the disability community is on the cutting edge of intersectionality. And as we look at a range of issues that we might call disability issues, we recognize very quickly that that's not necessarily just the case.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, do I have any time left?
A minute.
Okay, I'm going to ask about the disability tax credit for type 1 diabetes. I know there are other things, places for the disability tax credit that have this time allocation as a barrier to access. So for diabetes, the 14 hours a week application appointments don't apply. So I'm just wondering if there's any movement on removing that time barrier, just again to modernize the disability tax credit.
Absolutely. So we appreciate, and what's happened historically, I've said this to this committee before, is that disability policy has been really driven or been a function of tax policy in this country. And my mandate letter commitment to take a modern approach to disability, to have a common definition of disability, is an exact response to the issues like this, where kind of functional impairment isn't captured by the current approach to disability in a program. And what I'm committed to is fundamentally changing our approach to disability so that we understand how, as opposed to a diagnosis, how kind of your day-to-day functioning is impaired by your disability or whatever medical or physical impairment you have. And so absolutely, there's no outcome on that particular type 1 diabetes 14 hours a week, I believe it is. But it's actually one of the driving factors to reconceive and have a modern approach to disability with a common definition across the government of Canada. Lucky for us, we already have one in the Accessible Canada Act. And diabetes would fall under that. So we're really excited about completely flipping this on its head.
Thank you, Madame Zarillo. That concludes. Thank you, Minister and departmental officials, for appearing before the committee on this important topic. Thank you, committee members. We will now adjourn the meeting for the vote. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you all.
Thank you.